It's nice to see all of you in chat. Oh, hi.
Hi, Les is doing great.
Les is doing great. That's good to hear. Oh yeah, my colorful bookshelf. I couldn't resist. I had to go grab a virtual background because my office right now is in transition from light blue to dark blue, but only half of it's painted.
That we could have looked at that as art. We could have looked behind you and said, beautiful piece of art, right? Yeah. So how is the weather where you are, Joe? What's it like where you are?
It is actually spectacular here in Las Vegas. It is unseasonably cool and seasonably, which is every day, sunny. So we're having a great time here at the BDO Alliance conference, hanging out with firms that typically have more than 50 employees. So it's a very different audience than I'm used to hanging out with and listening to kind of what their struggles are. And of course, I'm here because of their client accounting service departments. I do not try to at all deal with how they're managing a firm with 300 or 400 employees, but I am definitely interested in working with them on their client accounting service departments, and they are with us as well. So we're starting to hang out with larger and larger firms. And you know what's very interesting? Every single CAS department that I've run into here at BDO Alliance is using QuickBooks Online. Everyone. So QuickBooks Online is obviously able to scale to this market quite well. And of course, they're using all of the famous add-ons too, where most of the work gets done. But yeah, it's not, I thought I would see a little bit of Intact, some NetSuite, maybe something like that, but it's about 90% QBO. They've done a good job getting that message out.
That's fantastic. They've really been a firm that, led the way on cloud accounting.
Yes, they have.
Services.
But the fact that BDO uses QBO too set the precedent for their alliance members, right? I mean, Deb Deffer's into his best friend. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. She's definitely loves their QuickBooks.
Well, that's cool to hear the perspective of the larger firms, because many that are here often are looking at some of the things that the larger firms are doing to bring a piece of that back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But can I tell you the inverse is true?
Yeah.
They need people who are experts, true experts with a capital E on bookkeeping process. That's what they're lacking. So you're seeing more and more of these firms start to acquire bookkeeping firms, not for their book of business, but to get their people.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Workflows, people. You would really learn a lot in that kind of world.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. It really is. It's interesting to see there's just so much acquisition happening right now. Exactly because of what you said, Joe, is, the bigger firms and the mid-sized firms, they're looking for those firms that have good processes and great people. And so if you're my age and you're looking at, an exit plan, right, for retirement, you've got to get on board to have.
And there is a very specific pathway to make your bookkeeping practice appealing to these folks. Mm-hmm. I just had lunch with an M&A expert, mergers and acquisitions expert, who was talking about exactly what the managing partners of these firms are looking for when acquiring bookkeeping practices. And the biggest driver is price point, which kind of gets us to today's topic.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a perfect lead in.
Really is. I'm really excited about this episode because this is kind of the elephant in the room, right? Mm-hmm. We work with our clients. We give our heart and soul away to our clients. We love what we do. And what ends up happening is through our drive of excellent customer service and that relationship with the client, we end up giving away so much of the value that we bring to our clients. And the thing about that is it's not sustainable. You can't grow a business if you're not charging for your services. And it's just a simple math, right?
It's very, very, very true. So I'm glad we're having the conversation because, as honest as we can be with each other, that not everything's roses. I think that allows us to be able to have that free space to learn from each other and understand what others are doing. Just like, here we are kind of curious what the large firms are doing, and they're curious what we're doing. So, it's an industry that needs each other in both directions.
In both directions, that is true.
I will go ahead and introduce myself. So I'm Liz Scott. I'm happy to be here. And we have got a firm that works with small businesses. And the coolest thing that we have done this year is really shift a lot of our service focus over into working with developers. We've been doing that for quite a few years, but we really dove hard into that this year. And we are having so much success and a wild blast. I think our entire team has been really jazzed about working in this space that we very much are passionate about. So that feedback with developers, they're definitely listening, and that has been the thing that has gotten me up in the morning. Heather, you want to share a little bit about you?
I do. I just think that's fantastic, Liz. It makes me so happy to see you thriving in the space that you truly love. So kudos for building that out and really following that. So I'm Heather Satterley, and formerly I'm still the founder of, formerly the CEO of Satterley Business Services, which included Satterley Accounting Services and Satterley Training. I've just taken a position as a Chief Innovation Officer over at Growth Lab Finance as a Service, and I'm going to be leading up their team, a new team within Growth Lab that is focused on process optimization and third-party implementation services, both within accounting firms and with their clients. So I am absolutely thrilled to be joining their team. They are top-notch professionals, super duper smart, learning a ton, and I'm just really, really enjoying this. So I can't wait for all of the things that we have planned. So yeah, that's me.
Well, I like you, so I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for sharing. I will say a big thank you to our Champagne level sponsor, Ignition. So because of Ignition, we're able to bring a lot of our episodes to you and cool templates. So you're going to be seeing some little video snippets of the templates that we showed you using Ignition for being able to create engagement letters. So you'll be seeing some little snippets and some little fun things. We are honored today to have Joe Woodard with us today. Many of you are like myself. Whenever I went to my very first Scaling New Heights conference, my eyes were opened. I felt like the blinders came off, and I said, there's more people like me who get excited about what we do, and not all of my family does. And so to be able to be in a room full of people who hug each other and share, all kinds of woes and hoorays with each other, I am genuinely grateful for eternity to you, Joe.
Well,
and,
thank you, Liz. It means a lot. But it's really the community, like you said. I just get to open the doors and host the party. It's who comes. That's what makes the magic.
Well, somebody has to throw that party, and that's not an easy task.
It's not an easy party to throw, I'll tell you that.
And I know that I've told you more than once, Joe, how eternally grateful. I went to my very first Scaling New Heights in San Antonio, and I had exactly the same experience as Liz, where I walked in and I was like, this is where all my people were. You go through life, and it has resulted, going to Scaling New Heights has resulted in friendships that I never would have had, really profound friendships with like-kind, professionals that I never would have had. So, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now because, of what I've learned there. So huge thank you to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys, because you two and everybody else who comes that makes up the over 1,000 pro advisors, they really are the magic. So thank you.
I would say that probably the majority of our people here have been to Scaling New Heights. And those of you who haven't, Scaling New Heights is a really great conference for us to be able to get together and share and learn from the best of the best. And the sessions and the people, the table chat, that's one of my favorite takeaways, because I learned so much in those little table conversations during lunch. So today we're going to be talking about rescuing, scope creep, and other ways that your services are given away. And Elizabeth, here in chat, you said it so well that it's difficult to charge for emails and phone calls. I find it really, really hard to charge for those quick fixes. You know, it's a hop in, it's a hop out, and you're like, oh, you don't need to pay me anything because it took, you know, maybe 5 minutes. But the truth is, there's something about that mental switch that takes time to get started, to say your hellos, and then fix it, and then jump out, and then go to the next thing. So it's not just this 5 or 10 or 30-minute thing. It actually takes more of your brain capacity. And I'm like you, Elizabeth, sometimes it's hard for me to definitely charge enough for those. So rescue workers, this is something that I've heard you say, Joe, before, that our industry is full of these who want to throw these life rafts out to the people who are swimming around and pull them onto the boat so that way they're no longer drowning.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, what's interesting, Liz, that's not just observational, it's clinical. We've put enough bookkeepers through actual DISC assessments to determine that scientifically. And the DISC assessment will rate you on where you are on different kinds of personality profiles and the way you interact with others. It's not just the D, the I, the S, and the C, which if you guys have never studied that, go to Wikipedia and kind of get a crash read on it. But it's about, what does an I mean? Well, an I is a natural promoter type, you know, a person who I don't know his DISC assessment, but I would be really, really surprised if Hector Garcia is not an I, right? Because it's just, you can just tell it's the way he's wired, right? But where that's observational with Hector, what we have learned is that the rescuer side of the fence, which is a paradigm of a combination of a couple of those D, I, S, C letters, we've actually tested that scientifically. And in our sample group, it was over 75% of bookkeepers are rescuer types in their personality profile. And I don't think, because it will actually measure adaptive and natural style, what we were really shocked by was that's not an adaptive style. The profession didn't cause them to behave this way. It was the inverse. They gravitated toward the work they do because they want to help small business. That's noble. But at what point does the help become enablement? And that's a very fine line.
You know, the other part of it too is, and I saw a comment in chat, so it made me think, no, I don't think that anybody intends to give away services for free, but because of this mentality that you're sharing that we have, it's really easy for some of us to take that back seat and to not share whatever we're suffering. And so we end up just being silent about it. And I think that's why our clients don't always know that we're suffering. They don't always know how much work goes into it, because we're not those, you know, as a group, we're not those outward people who are going to always complain.
Right. And this is the biggest opposition I get to it is, but I want to be an empower small business. I want to help people who otherwise can't afford it, right? And I am not saying don't be altruistic. As a matter of fact, my entire philosophy is just the opposite. I'm all about benevolent profitability. But notice that the second part of that includes profitability, right? The give back approach, right? But the key is, just like any other expenditure, it must be budgeted. I'm not saying don't give to a struggling small business owner who needs your help. I'm saying have a budget for that pro bono work and spend down against the budget so it's measurable and it's regulated. And the other thing is, make absolutely sure they need it. Not everybody who appears to be a sad case is actually a sad case. That you might be giving them free services while they're buying a third lake home. You don't know, because you don't necessarily see the personal wealth portfolio. You just see that their latest entrepreneurial effort might be struggling.
So, you know, I don't want to pick on an industry, but we did talk about ours, so it's fair to talk about other industries. I did make an observation, and I think there's others here who might agree, that sometimes home builders, sometimes those general contractors are really good at hiring a contractor and then being like, bye. And so they're very good at sales, and they're very good at pulling you in. And not always reciprocating the response that we're desiring.
Yep.
And you know, I really think, and I know Joe, you're going to be talking about this, is that it's got to be, our mindset has to change. So as Liz, you were just saying that the way that we, you know, interact with our clients and the way that we end up, you know, having scope creep and giving away our services comes down to the fact that we grew up in an industry that, you know, charged the clients by the time that we're spending rather than the value that we're providing to the client.
Correct.
And so until you change your mindset about that, you know, it's hard to get
there are
over.
a couple of traps though. That's one of the biggest traps. And my cautionary tale on that is an example from many years in my past where there was a very local person found me on the QuickBooks Pro Advisor search, and it was all because they put in the zip code. So right around the corner, I happened to be headed out that day, back in that chapter of my life, I lived in the field, moving from client to client, servicing their QuickBooks. And I happened to be going right past their offices, and they said, I don't know what to do. I'm in a panic. My QuickBooks won't open. I think the file's corrupted. Well, there was an old trick on QuickBooks Desktop. You could hold down the shift key and it would open up, and then you could do a quick, you know, there was a whole thing you could do. And he didn't know that. I didn't know if that would solve it. I said, look, I'm stopping right by. So I go by, and it's literally on the way. It takes literally 30 seconds for me to pull over and drop in. It takes about 20 minutes for me to hold down that shift key, figure it out, get him past that start window, false corrupted thing. Say, now you're going to want to do a quick little, you know, file verification thing, might do a light rebuild. Hey, call me if you got another problem. And I headed out the door, and I'm thinking I'm in there in less than 20 minutes. I'm already on my way someplace. So he turns and he goes, what do I owe you? And I was like, you know, this was easy. Don't worry about it. Okay. And that's that. As I look back on what happened there, I realized, like you said, Heather, I thought I was selling my time, and I thought it wasn't worth it to spin up an invoice and an engagement letter to sell them 1/3 of an hour. And what I was actually selling was hard fought knowledge. I was selling an answer to his problem that was crippling his business, that maybe I was the only person in the entire county, maybe at that time, in that entire area of Northern Atlanta, who could solve that problem, and surely the only one that could swing by that morning. So what was it really worth? I don't know, $300, $400, $500. Definitely not 20 minutes or 1/3 of my hourly rate at the time. So, but I'll tell you the trap though. I think everybody at this point has all, you know, we were channeling our inner Ron Baker and stuff, and we get it that we're not supposed to charge by the hour. I'll tell you where the trap is. The subtle little trap is we know that about hours, but we still think the same thing about effort, right? And I've heard this over and over again. I was just coaching a bookkeeping firm, and I've only got a handful that I coach one-on-one because it helps me to stay close to the pain, right? It helps me to be real. So I take on a couple of bookkeeping firms a year, and this particular person, she said, well, I'm going through a whole discovery process. They're in Excel, and I'm looking at this, and there's maybe 5 or 6 transactions a month for about 6 companies in this portfolio. And so she says, I think I need to charge, and she gave a price. So I started asking other questions. And guys, this is so important for you guys to listen in on this conversation. I started asking other questions. I said, what is the amount of money that the companies all earn as a actual conglomerate? And so she said the number, and I said, great. What does the business owner say that they will be making in terms of revenue in the next 12 to 18 months? Now, that is a critical question, because in the answer to that question, you're going to get abundance or entrepreneurial mindset versus enduring small business trying to survive. Well, she said, and the number was about 10 times what it is today. So I said, what you have on your hands is an entrepreneur. You can only hope that they have a business plan and there's a substance to back up that entrepreneurism and that optimism. But what you have in the mindset is an entrepreneur. What you have is a plan on the part of that entrepreneur to create a 7-figure portfolio of businesses in the next 12 months, 7-figure revenue run rate in the next 12 months. So don't talk about where he is now. What you need to talk about is what it's going to take to get him to where he wants to go. all of the framework is not about how many transactions they have per month. Everything that you're framing, the product you're selling, is the protection of that ramp and that journey. It's a fast journey. It's a sprint. And if he doesn't have somebody protecting it, he will be in jeopardy to making it. And the most important thing for him is hitting that destination. Sell a protection for the destination. They did that, and they charged about 10 times what they were going to ask. So, and they got it. They got it in blink. They actually wrote out a check, and they walked away from the meeting where they pitched the price with 3 checks as a retainer. So if we'll understand that effort, just like time, isn't a determinative price. Effort is only, just like capacity, is only a measurement consideration to make sure that you can afford to deliver at the price the client is willing to pay. And if anybody didn't get what I just said, I want to make sure everybody got what I just said. So I'm going to bear the exhaustion of repeating it again. Can I do it? Because it's so important. That cost is not a determinant of price. Cost is a management consideration to make sure that when you price what it's actually worth, you can afford to deliver against the price the client is willing to pay. That's all that matters.
I love what you're doing there, because you're flipping it on its head, right?
Yes.
You're, instead of looking at, well, this is what I'm spending, so how much can they, afford above that? And that takes the whole value out of the equation, right?
Correct.
You're now diminishing who you are, what you're doing, the services that you're providing to your clients. So I
That's
love
exactly right.
flipping it on the head and just saying, can I even afford to do this? Now, what am I worth?
Yes.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
I got you. I got another one that's a price sensitivity buster. And that is, what would it take for that same client, a different client, just any generic client? They're coming to you. What would it take for them to hire somebody as an employee in order to accomplish what you can accomplish? Because it's another effort neutralizer. The employee can't do it as fast as you. They're not as automated as you. They don't have the systems, the experience you have. So obviously you're going to be faster and more efficient. Well, it's just another way of punishing ourselves. The faster, more efficient we are, we know not to bill by the hour because we punish ourselves, but the faster, more efficient we are, the less effort it takes. And therefore we still punish ourselves because of that whole thing, right? I just want my margin over cost. No, because you've already driven your cost down. So you're punishing yourself. So instead, what you say is, what would it take? Because this is the way you get to market value. What would it take to hire somebody inside that company, client's company, in order to accomplish what I can accomplish? That's your plumb line. Usually that is never less than a part-time experienced bookkeeper. In whatever market you're in, a part-time experienced bookkeeper, say 20 hours a week, is either 30,000 or 40,000, 50,000, all depends where you live, right? It's all relative, but you'll know the number. And usually it's not 20 hours a week. Usually it's 30, or maybe it's full-time. Then you have to start factoring in, of course, equipment. You have to factor in training. You have to factor in the fact that they're paying them to go on vacation where you're 100% optimized. Turnover. This is even if they can find a qualified bookkeeper, because it's impossible to do these days, right? So you have the whole headhunting lift, and you put all of that in front of the client, plus payroll taxes, plus benefits, and that whatever it is, I'm just going to go with the 30,000 number, becomes 40 on a good day. Now, anything less than around $3,500 a month, and you're saving them money. I was a little high on that, around $32,000, $3,200 a month. Anything less than about $3,200 a month, and you're saving them money. So $2,500 a month for that account that takes you 10 hours a week, but would take them 20 or 30. You are killing it for that client. All right, go ahead.
So I'm asking, I totally, understand. I've heard other practitioners ask, and I just want to hear your answer to this, is that that's great. That's great that, if they were to hire somebody internal, this is what it would cost them. But we have, the competition piece of it, right? Where they're hearing, I can have a firm come in for $200 a month or $500 a month or whatever. And so,
or I can go to Pilot, or I can go to Bench, or I can go to H&R Block and get it even cheaper, right?
Exactly. So what do you recommend for people?
That's the best question. I love to get this question. Okay. Because there's an answer to this question. And the answer to the question is, you must do what everybody else who charges less than you doesn't do. We call this bookkeeping plus. Or if I'm over at BDO Alliance, I'll call it CAS plus, right? It's all just terminology because they have CAS departments. But the idea is that you plus up the bookkeeping with levers you pull that actually save the client money. So now it's no longer my cost versus my competitor's cost. It's how much money am I going to save you versus how much money is my competitor able to save you. The examples that I commonly give out, but there are a wide range of them, are budget curation, not just creation, with spending controls and spend management services, which are a combination of technology and general and administrative analysis, accounts receivable analytics to reduce bad debt expense, cash flow projections, which can reduce interest expense, but it also has strategic values on short-term spend, and take a product like Reach Reporting or Drav 2 is very powerful, but Reach Reporting I like as an incremental step to something like a Drav or a Curation, because it puts the 10 or 15 essential measurements they need to be looking at into something that looks like it was designed by an enterprise marketing department. And you sit down and you talk about that with them. If you offer those kinds of layers of services, you can put an ROI calculator on it. So now let's take the same client. That same client's $40,000 on a good day. Now they go back and they say, but I just got a quote from Pilot, or I just got a quote from Bench, or the Pro Advisor down the street. And yes, you're $2,000 a month. I'll just use round numbers. They're $2,000 a month, but they said they can do it for $750. All right. So, and this happens all the time, right? Because the problem is systemic. The same problem that we are trying to, same hole we're trying to dig ourselves out of, everybody else thinks they can only make money if they dig themselves into. It's a race to the bottom factor, right? And nobody's going to win that race in a world where we have the Walmarts of bookkeeping. The only people that win the race are the people that scale into tens of thousands of clients. That will never be us. So yes, we can feel sorry for them or feel bad for them because we know that they're running themselves into a dead end. But while they're doing it, they're part of the gravitational force that pulls us down. So to neutralize it, we have a different set of math after this. What we say is, it looks like you have around $30,000 a year in bad debt expense. Well, my accounts receivable analytics are predicting that if you were to manage XYZ differently, and by the way, that's a tool, it's called Tally Street. If you just attach it to QBO, it'll tell you all the data. It'll make you look really smart. My accounts receivable analytics are telling me that if you were to do XYZ differently, which we can help you to manage, then you will reduce this bad debt expense in half. So now, what did I say? Because I'm throwing out hypotheticals, right? So 30,000. So $15,000 we can save you in bad debt expense year over year. While I'm seeing that there are duplicate expenditures between some of the software products that you are using and some of the utilities that you are using right out of the gate, just as a little entry gift, I can save you about another 10,000 going into this year. Not sure if I can do that year over year, but your traveling salespeople are not meeting the spending guidelines that you establish in your handbook. In other words, have the bigger conversation. By the time you add all those things up, this is the beauty of it. I want to finish it out with a number. By the time you add all those things up, you're usually saving them more than what you're charging them. Okay, go ahead.
Totally. And what's so like making me sit here and go, oh my goodness, is that, and it actually feeds right into the topic of this session, is that we're all doing that, but we're not charging for it because the client comes to us with a pain point and we've engaged them for bookkeeping. And now we're going in and we're coming up with these.
Well, that's the scope creep side, right?
Exactly.
But I would tell you, Heather, and much of your present company excluded, because there's some of the best bookkeeping minds in the world that join you every week. The rank and file of bookkeepers aren't doing much of what I just said. But what they are doing is a lot of out of scope work, but it's not analytical in nature. It's more addressing pain points like in a triage environment, which is still intensely valuable, and the sort of thing that the $750 a month bookkeeper that's competing with you probably can't do. So it's still so the scope creep is a big piece, but I would still say there may be a little bit of a software adoption and learning curve for most bookkeepers to do what I just described back there. Now, but get to your scope creep piece. Yes, tighten it down. And this is another place, just like with the person I came by and saved them for 20 minutes. We have the same mentality. That's a lot of paperwork. I've got to send out a change order. I've got to charge them. And all they're asking me to do is something that'll take me 15 or 20 minutes. So when I was traveling in the Middle East, a lot of you have heard me say this metaphor before. They have a very colorful version of our metaphor. If you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. And their colorful metaphor says, if you let the camel's nose in the tent, you get a camel in your tent. And I don't know if that's actually real of camels in the desert, but it's a funny way to look at it. And it's so much more apropos because there are a ton of people that have camels in their tent right now. And it's all because they let the nose in, right? So it's 90% about boundary setting. And it is 10% on those little tiny change orders, 10% about monetization. But what'll happen is in the boundary setting, you will end up with, in a series of change orders, a much, much higher dollar amount. Now, the second part I want to say to that is, so no amount is too small. Second part is, you got to have the right tool or you'll never be able to sustain change orders that fast. And it just so happens your champagne sponsor is the best tool. So if you use Ignition, you spit out those change orders like rapid fire, then you can get that done and you'll be a lot more prone to keep that camel's nose out of the tent. And I honestly I can't remember if I've told that metaphor on your show before. And if I have,
I know that's a new one.
No, it is a new one.
I have a friend who she's always saying, you can only have so many puppies. So you can only take so many of these clients that you feel sorry for. You can't have all the praise. So it's okay to go ahead and have one or two, but you can't have a litter.
No, you can't have a litter puppy. That's a good point. And you know what you hit on, Liz, is another one of the key measurements I look at. So far we've covered the sort of the cost plus myth. We've covered the scope creep myth, and that I don't have to manage that and I'm okay. And it's the overall capacity lift, right? So I tell people to look from the top side down. I'm gonna take the sole practitioner because they're an easy example here. If I'm a sole practitioner, I figure that in a sole practitioner model, I'm probably going to invest somewhere around 70-30, about 30% on the continued development of tech and research and training and so forth. About 70% is actually going to go into productions. All right, that 70%, if you take away all of the other things that we do, like vacation and everything else, and you just go with the work weeks, then you're looking at 70% of somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,800 hours a year. So if you are then running that math out, and again, I'm doing this in my head, so you're looking at about 1,300 hours, something like that, a year. So let's just play with me on the rounding. I know we're all accountants and it may be OCD crazy for you, but okay, 1,300 hours or so. Now, the question to ask yourself is not how many hours am I going to bill? All right, but remember, hours are a measurement. They're not a determinant. The reason I'm doing that math is to say that's your fixed capacity. When you take that number and you calculate it into how many weeks of production you have, you only have so many weeks to dedicate to a client lift. The question you have to ask yourself is, does my book of business as a whole drive the lifestyle I want? Because I loved your puppy comparison. It's fine to have a couple puppies. Does the book of business as a whole drive the life I want? And I would be so bold as to say, because it's not about, I don't want to try to dictate to people what the life they want is, but I would tell you, if we define the life you want as benevolent profitability, financial independence, a healthy retirement, the ability to give back, and the ability to weather the ups and downs of economic and political environments without having to worry about your bank balance, I can't see a reality where that's not $400,000 for a sole practitioner. So you have to ask yourself, and I know I just blew people's minds with $400,000 for a sole practitioner, but folks, not only do I believe it should be your minimum target, I know it's achievable. But the question you have to ask yourself is, what kind of book of business does it take to get there? Right. And you can look at that from several different ways, not who are the puppies, but what's the average? What's the median I'm making across each individual client? What's the nature of the services I have to offer and what percentage that are going to drive that kind of revenue up? What are the residuals or passive revenue streams that I can create through referral partners, VAR programs, and referral sources in order to beef that up so that any way at all, major takeaway of this whole little deal, any way that I can make money disproportionately to effort gets me to that kind of yield against my capacity, because it's counter capacity.
Our clients want us to have headspace. You know, I typed that in there that I do my best work whenever I have headspace, but it made me stop and think whenever you were talking about client pricing. Our clients want us to do our best work. So really it is beneficial to them to go ahead and pay us extra for being able to have time to think about them, to care about them, to come up with ideas about solutions that might fit with them, to give them a little extra training or whatever it is that they might actually need, that buffer.
Yes. Hey, Liz, can you pull up the wrong and the right practice equation from that deck I sent you?
I can. So
it's deep in, and I don't remember the slide number, but there's very clear. There's like the little circles, and it says wrong practice equation, right practice equation, because that's a great way of framing out with a visual everything that we're talking about here. I can pull it up too on my end, but if you've got it, I know you had the deck up. And then that should be in the handout for folks. Yeah, change your practice equation. Let's start with the wrong one and go to the right one. Yep, you have it?
I think I might have started.
You do. No, this is perfect. But don't go to the hourly rate, because all your listeners are already past that point. Go to the next one where it says fixed rate, because that's where they're living, right? So we know this one's wrong. Go to the next one. Okay, so this is the wrong practice equation that keeps you from producing $400,000 as a single producer while you're running a business. This is what's holding you back. That revenue, and by the way, credit where credit's due, this is Ron Baker's equation. Revenue equals people power times efficiency times fixed rate. Well, what happens in this equation, you become obsessed with efficiency. Fixed rate is determined by the market, which is Heather's point, right? I could be worth $2,500 a month, but my competitor drives the price down. So fixed rate is a marketed determinant. And people power is also determined by the market, meaning I have a minimum amount I can pay people before I get into human resource turnover issues and recruitment issues. So it's determined by the market. The only one that I have power over here is the middle one, efficiency. Well, in that, I've become obsessed with efficiency. I'm trying to drive efficiency down. And that means I value production over my valuation of knowledge. Because if I stop producing for 1 second, if I stop sprinting on production for 1 second, I can't drive profits up. But there's an extra gotcha in this. Not only is that the reason you're exhausted, not only is that the reason you have capacity problems, even as you're becoming more efficient, it's self-defeating because price is being driven down constantly by the Walmarts of bookkeeping. We're not bottoming out. So as price continues to go down, which is the circle on the right, the efficiencies, you have to keep going down in order to sustain your existing gross profit margin. Here's the problem. Until true artificial intelligence emerges, you're going to hit a concrete floor on efficiency, but the floor is lower than that on price. Okay, now that you're sufficiently depressed, let's go to the next slide. Go ahead.
I was just saying, Joe, that it looks like that previous slide, I called it the hamster wheel formula.
It's the hamster wheel formula.
Yeah.
Right. And can I hover on this one for a second? Because I'm going to really drive this home with a data point. Scaling New Heights has been around for 13 years. You guys just attested that it changed your careers. It's powerful. It has the most advanced QuickBooks training. You know, it's amazing, right? And I say that to the credit of you guys and my team. It's an amazing place. Yet, with 500,000 US QuickBooks Pro advisors, we're excited to announce we have over 1,000 QuickBooks Pro advisors at Scaling New Heights. That's crazy. Where the other 499,000 are now. I've got an even bigger data point. Take Intuit themselves. Intuit spends more on marketing their QuickBooks Connect than I spend on producing my show, because they're bigger, right? They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They have it. But I say that to make this point, that even with their marketing engine, and they're the best marketing engine probably in the United States outside of Apple, with their marketing engine, they are still only able in the history of QuickBooks Connect to secure about 2,500 of those 500,000. And some of those overlap me. Net 2,000, 1,800 that they can actually get to leave their office and come to a conference. Between the two of us that we can get to do that. And it's because those 500,000 on the whole are obsessed with efficiency, not with knowledge. So now let's go to the next slide. All right. So again, credit to Ron Baker, because with a small tweak that he and I brainstormed together since he published his book From the Future, this is pretty much his formula. Okay. Profitability equals intellectual capital times effectiveness. So what it basically is saying is your value equals what you know multiplied by how you use what you know to increase the client's wealth. That's the only thing that matters. Not how much effort, because the client doesn't care. Not how much time, they really don't care. Not even how much attention you gave them through the process. They like it, but ultimately they don't value it. Well, the only thing they will value is the same thing that every business owner values, is how much money did you save me, make me? And that's not necessarily money. How much psychological wealth did you bring me? And health did you bring me? And joy did you bring me? And peace of mind did you bring me? And everything else can be, it can be non-financial wealth, that's fine. But what was the non-financial and financial wealth that you brought to me because of what you know? And when that happens, and it gets back into accounts receivable analytics and cash flow projections and spend management and all those things that require a learning curve. And then I'm seeing the advisory these guys are doing, across the street. I mean, they're talking about a level of advisory that frankly I need as a multi-million-dollar business, right? I'm their client. I need to go to these guys. I'm just talking about the back office analytics for the $500,000 to $1 million company. And that still requires the learning curve. But the more you know, the more you can generate wealth and the more clients are willing to pay you. That if this equation were fully embraced psychologically by the professions, there would be over 10,000 people at QuickBooks Connect and Scaling New Heights.
So I really like this equation. And one of the things that stands out is the word effectiveness. And that's such a powerful message. And talking about pricing the client and talking about a team, one of the thoughts that came to mind was thinking as a team and pricing. What's your suggestion for in a scenario where you're going to have other workers go out and do the jobs? Do you charge less whenever it's other people in your team than it would be for you to do it?
No,
because they might be less effective.
That's a very, very old school totem pole kind of caste system mentality, right? That you got the partner rate, the associate rate, and everything else. And I know why you were asking this, Liz. You were setting me up with a, you know exactly where I was going to go, right? Absolutely not, because if you look at the equation, there is no who. There's a what you know times what wealth you can generate, and once that's put into a formula, who actually generates the wealth becomes less important. Now, I'm not saying there's not personal brand. And obviously, when you're working with, say, Joe Woodard engaged with a company, or working with Heather at her firm, there's a more prestige to that. There's a little less price sensitivity to that. I get it. But the whole paradigm of the associate and the reviewer and the partner rates and all that is a cost plus paradigm. I'm paying the associate less than I'm paying the reviewer, and I'm paying the reviewer less than I'm paying the partner. Therefore, the client needs to pay more because I'm paying them more. And who says? That's not the client's responsibility to cover your payroll. it's their responsibility to measure value and compensate accordingly. And if I have a person I'm paying $40,000 a year who can do, first, this is where it all self-corrects. If I have a person I'm paying $40,000 a year who can do the whole bookkeeping plus model as a bookkeeping firm, then I need to start paying them more, but not because the client paid me more, because they're able to generate more wealth, right? It's just like Heather said, it's tipped on its head. Yeah.
So I want to ask a question, but I also don't want to like ask a question before it's time. So I'm just going to ask it and you can say, hold it, Heather, and we'll talk about it later.
That's fine.
Does that work?
That's
okay.
Fine. Sure.
So my question is this. So, you know, I can think about people that have a bookkeeping service. They know they should be doing, you know, focusing on cash flow, focusing on some of these advisory, you know, services with their clients, right? But I would say, you know, people don't know where to start. They don't know where to start with that, and they're scared, and there's a big risk to it, right? What if I'm wrong?
All of those things are entirely true. And of course, you know, we face this all the time because we're the ones that are coaching them to plus up their bookkeeping. And then we have a school of advisory where we're actually teaching them how to do the management advisory and the higher skilled stuff, not unlike what's happening across the street. But what we find is about 10% of the bookkeepers we engage want that highest end, but they're loving this bookkeeping plus part, right? This reachable middle space. But even though it's reachable, and even though it still is defined in the parameters of a bookkeeper, you're just a super bookkeeper, right? It's still scary, super scary. But what we find is there are barriers to people wanting to, they see it, like they'll hear what I'm saying on this call today in your podcast, and they'll say, I want it. And the thing that stops them from doing it is not even ultimately fear. I think that these are business owners. These are people who are courageous. They weathered a COVID pandemic on three fronts: personal, their own business, and their clients' businesses collectively. These are brave souls. It's not ultimately fear they can't push through. It is capacity they can't push through. There's a chicken and egg problem of saying, if I had more knowledge work, I would be able to have more capacity, but I can't invest in knowledge work until I have this capacity. And then this brings us right back around to price. Price is the beginning and the end. It starts with price correction because you probably need that in your practice, right? You correct price, and in the correction of price, you'll lose some 20% or so of your clients, while the 80% who stay pay more. And that's not hard math to do, to say net gain. Now, you don't do it all at one time. It's too risky. You do it measured, you roll it through, you learn exactly where the tolerance points are on the corrective side, and then you push it all the way through the practice. Then you take the 20% that you gain back, and these are rough numbers, 10, 20, 30, whatever. You take that capacity that you gain back from the clients who take the hike, and you resist the temptation to go fill it with more work at your new price point because you're excited, right? You use the capacity to invest in knowledge work. And then you're capable of not just price correcting on the value you have today. You can start increasing value and price proportionately tomorrow. Price is the bookends. Correct today, price to value tomorrow.
I love this because it's 100% intentional. It's intentionally running your business. And I think that's the big thing, you know, that keeps us back as, you know, especially small practitioners, is that intent. You know, we're constantly putting out fires. We're constantly trying to just make everything work. And it's difficult to give yourself that gift of being intentional and saying, I need to take this time to sit with my business, right? And look at the numbers and make intentional decisions that are going to drive this process forward.
Yeah.
And you know, I think
and scope creep helps with that too. That's the other thing too.
Yeah.
Start controlling the scope creep. You'll have more capacity. Yes, Liz?
I like that the person is taken out of this, because that piece of us in our industry that sometimes I think we undervalue us, that's removed in this equation. It's the results. So that's the piece that's being priced. That's the thing that the client wants. They want you to be effective. So
Yes.
this formula definitely is a home run to me.
It also takes out the imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've used this example for myself, but I've never been more acutely aware of it than I have been this week. I feel like a nurse at a doctor's convention, because I'm not a CPA, right? And I don't have an MBA, and I don't have any of these fancy titles, right? But what's happening is these CPA firms, who frankly, when it comes to extremely advanced analytics, practice, business valuation, and a lot of the futurist kinds of algorithms that they can run, there's some very smart people over here. Those people could just stand circles around me on some of the higher end things that they do. But that's not making me feel like an imposter walking around, because they're beating a path to me. People are pointing, go talk to that guy. They're beating a path over to my booth, because in the area where I know what I'm doing, I can increase their wealth. Without a CPA, without the MBA, without being a member of the ICPA, none of those things, I have the knowledge necessary that I can multiply, in the benefit of these firms to effectiveness or their increase in wealth. And when they know that, they do not care. They don't ask where I went to college. They don't ask what my degree was. They don't know if I have any letters. They stop caring. It's like dying of a heart attack and somebody comes by with a defibrillator and knows how to use it. And you're like, yeah, but where are you board certified exactly? No. When you have an acute need and somebody has the knowledge to save you, that's all that matters. And that'll get people past the terror wall too. They'll be confident in their knowledge, and they'll be confident in their track record, rather than trying to deal with confidence off their credentials.
So Joe, how long does it typically take for somebody to transform this within their practice?
It depends, of course, based on how aggressively they pursue it. The actual learning curve to get somebody to where they can do the bookkeeping plus skills that I specifically mentioned here, which are technology driven with a knowledge layer, that surprisingly, the knowledge transfer piece of that is surprisingly in weeks, not months. The model is the trickiest part. And the biggest learning curve I've found is sales. Getting the accountant to look a business owner who makes 2 or 3 million in sales in the eye, and with complete conviction say, I can do this for you. And then get the price they deserve and close it right there on the spot. We're not good salespeople as a profession. So to answer your question, couple of weeks to get the skill set, if they want to really cram that in, right? I'm finding it varies based off of what other challenges are. But what I can tell you to give hope to everybody listening here is, we've not just seen 1, we've not just seen 10, we have seen a significant change in a significant number of firms who will embrace this model. And we coach to the model, and I'm not here to sell my coaching service. It's not what it's about. It's about the achievability of it. It's what I'm trying to inspire people toward. It is achievable, and we have seen it. And we've seen people push through every barrier to get there.
Well, so I am going to go ahead and share your slide about connecting with the Woodard events. So I want to make sure, because I know we're running up on the end of time, but there are people here, believe it or not, that don't know you, Joe. And so they don't know all of the things that you have to offer. And so I want to make sure that you have a moment to share with everyone here what you've got going on. And I don't know if this is the best slide that you want me to.
Well, it's just a slide I threw in because this webinar is coming up on Thursday. And I thought, well, it's right around the corner, if people are listening to this live. And so I thought it was a great way for them to engage, and it's free. So if you want to check that out, it's woodard.com/webinars. But if you want to really get your mind wrapped around everything we do, everybody knows this as the host of Scaling New Heights, right? If they know us at all. But if you look at it, it's a 4-legged stool. We educate, and we do it through the conference and webinars. That's a lot of people do that. We coach, and not a lot of people do the coaching. And not a lot of people have built out the coaching program we've built out, which is a whole catalog where you can choose from hundreds of hours of coaching programs, not just learning, but guidance, group, and mentor through change. So I would encourage you to check out our coaching area of our website. The other thing that people don't know that we do are resources like our advanced bookkeeping system, where we have a efficient, modernized bookkeeping practice in a box. And the box includes not just a pre-vetted tech stack and a standardized process, but, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in this webinar, we're the only people partnered in the world with Wolters Kluwer to fractionalize their shared service center. So if you're staffing challenged, you can get people who are experienced bookkeepers through us, where you would have to buy them in 2,080 hour a year tranches with Wolters Kluwer. You can do it with us at 5 hours per week minimum commitment. So it's right sized. And that's why Wolters Kluwer went through us. So if you take people, systems, and process, we have that in a box too. And then we have some other fun things out there you can check out, like a reality TV show called Tech Makeover. Production values are cable television quality, $125,000 production budget per production hour. It's really unique out there in the space. And it's all free. Go check it out. It's on my website at woodard.com.
I just launched the poll, so those of you that are kind of listening in the background, go ahead and vote in the poll. If you'd like to have Joe's team reach out to you so you can learn more about all the amazing things we were talking about today, scaling new heights, the coaching, and his educational program, we'll get that information over to you. Good, we've got a couple of people who are waiting on that.
And by the way, Heather, thank you, by the way, for that shout out about the strategic pricing workshop. The principles that I covered here at a high level and a conversational level, we cover in an intensive 4-week workshop that has application layers, coaching layers, mentorship sessions to get you to where you can actually deploy and correct price and deploy a pricing system. It's the 4-week version of what we did here for about an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen your program, Joe, and it's really awesome because you're with a cohort. So it's not just you, right, watching videos. You're actually have the opportunity to collaborate and commiserate with your cohort. And that is just incredibly valuable, for sure.
You know, and so Heather, you and I both have done some of the Woodard Institute and gone through some of those classes. And each of those times that we're together, there's something that comes out that's unique, that pulls you in. It makes you kind of evaluate what you're doing. And then there's little homework pieces, at least in the workshop that I went through. The homework was the part that I went off and I had to do. I had to digest all of these ideas and then go apply them into my life. And then having those meetings, those follow-up meetings, to be able to, you know, it's your accountability group. How did you do?
Yeah, it is. And we actually ask, how did that homework go? When we tell experiences. And if somebody didn't do it, one of our homework exercises, the strategic pricing workshop, as you know, Heather, is to actually go ask for the price. And, and then they come back, and 20% of the people actually go to a client and ask for the price. We know that, but we get those 20% to share. And then the next week, watch how many people go ask for the price, right? And some of the things that people have shared have blown my doors off, right? One person shared that they quoted $76,000 for something that they were going to, for annual bookkeeping, $76,000 a year, for something that they were going to quote about $20,000 a year for. And the client said yes. Somebody else said that they had a $400 a month client. They went to $900 a month. Not quite as dramatic, but still really, really good. That's $6,000 more a year. So when people realized one conversation can generate thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of additional revenue, they started going, me too. Let me go talk to my client, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really
well,
powerful.
Everybody wants to have that feeling of win. It's like it's the reward for all of the effort that you put in to those results that is exciting. And I'm thankful that you came on the episode today and was sharing. I think that you definitely made an impression on a lot of people here.
Absolutely.
And we're grateful. And I've been
This is
drinking
always
my
one of my
drink over
favorite
here.
places to hang out. Every time you guys ask me to come on, I'm just like, yeah. You know, my EA always goes, will you? And I said, anytime they ask, it's always yes. Stop asking me, just to say yes.
Well,
So,
I have to share the drink name because it's just perfectly titled. This right here is called a Gold Rush, right?
Love
It makes sense now.
Perfect.
mm.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go
Definitely.
ahead and close out the poll because I think the next thing
Oh,
that we
did
want
I
to
not
do.
close it?
Oh, well, it's closed now.
Okay.
The next thing that we want to do is make sure that everybody knows of the things that are coming up. So next week is Accounting Web Live. So Heather and I will be in person again. Super exciting. Client Hub is going to be Judy. Everybody here who knows Judy, her experience, she has been through a lot of these, trials and error. And she has created a solution from being one of us, knowing that there was a need for being able to have client communication and be able to also have workflows built into the solution. So that's Client Hub. And she recently sold her firm. So that'll be fun to hear about what she's got going on. And then we've got Avalera Deep Dive. That's going to be fun because we're going to do a Stump the Expert. So bring all of your sales tax questions and see how we do. Not us, Heather and I, or talking about Avalera.
No. We'll bring questions, but we might bring some questions, but we're not the experts.
Thank goodness. That is not my job. And then we also will be at Scaling New Heights live.
Yay, can't
I
wait.
know. It's exciting.
So looking forward to it.
Very much so. So thank you, Joe, for coming on. Thank you for spending time with us today. And thank
Always
you,
great
all
to
of
be
you,
here.
for joining us.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Cheers. Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
I don't have one.
Bye.